This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
So we are here with Sister Rosetta Miller-Perry.
Yes.
I got it right, not Perry Miller, but Miller-Perry.
Miller-Perry.
All right, the 2015 recipient, We All Be Artivist Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, and a true media pioneer. It's an honor to have you on, Sister, today. How you feeling?
I feel great.
That's cool. So you can tell us a little bit about how you got into media. I mean, 'cause you have so many stories, so many reinventions of yourself. Can you tell us about the media story?
Well, as I was growing up in Coraopolis, Pennsylvania, which is the suburbs of Pittsburgh, I used to read the Pittsburgh Courier, and I had a great interest in knowing more about African Americans, my people, because I lived in a little town that had very few African Americans. And so I decided, after reading the paper, that I wanted to go south and go to school with African Americans, which I did. I went to Tennessee State University, and it really gave me a new birth. It made me feel that I had to do something that made a difference with my people. And so after going to Tennessee State, I transferred to Memphis State, and that's where I graduated from. I ended up in the Mecca of black folks, and it really taught me how to live and how to accept our people as we really were. While in Memphis, I worked with Irma Laws, who was with the Tri-State Defender. She was writing the society column. So that's what I really ended up being interested in. I then went on to Nashville after working for the federal government. I was part of that movement in Memphis when Dr. King was killed. At that time, I was working for the federal government, and I was a federal investigator. So after transferring to Memphis, I had the position, or I opened the office in Nashville, and I became the director of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And I became very involved in the community. We had an African American male here who had a newspaper here, and I was always just drawn to newspapers, so I met him and I started doing society columns for him. And then later on, I just decided that I wanted a different type newspaper, and I wanted a newspaper. And so I started the Tennessee Tribune. I wanted to have news for our people and for the majority community to let people know that we weren't all gangbangers and taking drugs and so forth. So I decided I wanted to do education, health, entertainment, and those types of things. I wanted to show the world who we really were. And from doing that, the newspaper really, really grew. And I just went on to where I am today. So today, we have our newspapers not only in Nashville, but Jackson, Chattanooga, and Memphis. So we're the only statewide newspaper in the state of Tennessee. Can I breathe?
Yes, you can breathe. Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a major accomplishment for a person of color, a black woman at that, to have the only major state circulating paper. That's incredible. And you couldn't even get a bank loan to start this enterprise.
I could not, and I think that I guess the tragic thing is, here was a bank that I have been with for many, many years. It's a traditional majority bank, and they would not let me have any money to start my business, even though at that time I had $70,000 in the bank. You know, they wanted me to take my money to buy my computers and so forth. And it was really, really, really tragic. But I really worked through it. And then I was renting, you know, at first. And so years later, another bank out of Mississippi, of all places, approached me because I was trying to buy a building. And this banker from Mississippi, in fact, the bank is in many southern states now, let me have the money to buy the building that I'm in, which is really a marvelous thing. So I bought the building, remodeled the building. This building is the old Universal Life Insurance building that A. Maceo Walker owned.
Wow.
So it is historical. And I stayed with the bank. In fact, I stayed with the bank until last year, because once I went back to the bank and I needed a $10,000 line of credit. And the bank told me that I would have to put up a condo that I owned on the lake. Now, I was to put up a $150,000 condo for a $10,000 loan, which was really just unfortunate and tragic. And that's the way white banks do the black community. And so, fast forward, last year I wanted to buy a newspaper van to deliver the papers in. And so I went to my bank again, and I asked for, the van was used for $9,000. And again, they put me through so much. It took days, all the paperwork, 3 years of IRS documents and so forth. And so I really got angry. And even though I liked the bank because that particular bank had black employees, black supervisors, managers, and so forth, and I became very familiar with them and all that. But at this point in my life, I was so angry that I immediately left, went somewhere else, got a $9,000 loan, same day, for my van, and I then decided enough is enough. So I just transferred all my funds into another local bank, which I'm very pleased with.
Well, you know, the crazy thing about it is, like you talk about the first bank, you had $70,000 saved up. They're using the interest from your savings to give other people loans and make other investments.
Right.
How long was you at that bank by any chance? The first bank?
Oh, the first time, I guess that's when I first started. So I've been at that bank maybe 10, 15 years, because that's the bank I had when I was the director of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, you know. And that was my beginning bank when I moved to Nashville from Memphis.
So this is why this is so powerful, your narrative, because the fact that you didn't anticipate this type of pushback or indifference And the fact that your media organization is not only still here but also thriving. So it's not just surviving, it's thriving in spite of racism, white supremacy.
That's right.
So what advice could you give young people, anybody who want to start a business and they can't get a loan even on any type of basic investments? What advice would you give them?
Well, it's very difficult because you do have to have money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to even give directions to a young person. My thing is, in Nashville, or in the SMA vicinity, you have a lot of rich African Americans, rich.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, somebody should at least pool their resources. If not individuals, families doing this, are churches. We have mega churches here with mega bucks. It look like some of these churches would have a credit union, like they do, maybe I think Shiloh in Washington, D.C. You know, you're not talking about loaning somebody $50,000. You might only be loaning them $1,000, you know, which could help a young person really survive. And the churches wouldn't have to worry about getting their money back because we all know we're captive. And they would get their money back. So I just think the churches could do more because I don't believe that we should rely upon white people for everything that we do. And that's why many of us, we are not successful.
And I'm glad you reached that point because I know you got Memphis connection and you talked about Dr. King. In this last speech, he talked about black self-help and economic empowerment. He talked about boycotting Oneness bread, Harsh bread, Coca-Cola. What good is to sit in a restaurant when you can't afford to buy a hamburger? Right. But also, beginning about the civil rights movement, you had another Walker, I guess Joseph Walker founded Tri-State Bank in Memphis. And what I like to tell people, like back in the, I guess it was late 50s or early 60s, you had a lot of prominent black folks in Mississippi involved in the Black Mississippi movement for civil rights. And what the White Citizen Council or the Sovereignty Commission did was freeze a lot of these black guys' credit, because a lot of them were businessmen and entrepreneurs. So in order for them to get credit for their farms or for their businesses, they had to go to a black bank, the Tri-State Bank in Memphis, to get that type of credit, because the white banks would not lend to them or anything like that. And I know I talked to Reverend C.T. Vivian, and he always tell me that they always consider Memphis the capital of Mississippi, because that's where all the finances are. Right. But if they had not been for the Tri-State Bank, a lot of those Mississippi activists would not have had a way to make a living. And the movement would not sustain itself, wouldn't have sustained itself long enough.
That's true. But on the other side, sometimes our black banks don't loan money to everybody. And they were loaning money to teachers and doctors and, and so forth, which still didn't help the poor person.
That's true too.
So, even today, it's the same situation. No matter what I have or what I've done, I doubt sincerely that I could have gotten a loan either from a black bank, because I think the black banks are like the traditional white banks. I guess they have the regulations are different and so forth. So if I wasn't a teacher or a preacher or someone like that, I couldn't have gotten a loan. I was just a government worker, and most black folks don't understand government workers. They don't really know government workers make a lot of money. Some of the best employees in this country. But they wouldn't know that because those government workers aren't in the social, I guess, circle. Right. The links, the whatever, So that's the downside.
So, yeah, that's a good point you make. I also am thinking about the 60s and the 50s as well, because you had a large economic expansion. Like, for example, it's totally different than it was 50 years ago. You had it better in a lot of ways from an economic point of view, because I could drop out of high school 50 years ago and get a job at the factory, make enough money to support a family of 4, and then retire 30 years after working at that job and have a good pension. Right. Those jobs, those days are long gone now.
They are long gone. But then, since you said that, then as director of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I saw another side also.
Right, definitely.
I saw where black men worked for a company for 30 years and talked about retiring and what they were going to go fishing and everything. And next thing you know, 30 days before retirement, they were fired. They were never ever able to draw their unemployment. They were fired because maybe 20 years or 25 years ago when they were young, this I'll never forget, right here in Tennessee, this one man, they found a empty beer can in the truck he was driving. Now he was young and probably did have a beer, and they kept that on his record. They kept it on his record just to deny him retirement benefits. Now you know, you cannot live on Social Security.
Right.
You know, and that's just tragic, and that has happened maybe up north, but I know throughout the South.
Wow, that's something that need to be heard. Because right now, I think the EEOC has been gutted, or is being gutted, on the so-called black president. You know, in terms, even the HBCUs are being on the verge of extinction. And Nashville is the Athens of the South, and you got some of the most prominent HBCUs of all time, and they can't find financing on a quote-unquote black president. So it's like we're going through another type of reconstruction period. It's supposed to be a post-reconstruction period. Like it's like kind of the early 1900s, where I look at 100 years ago, the biggest black leader in the country was Booker T. Washington. And about self-help. Now, 100 years later, we got a president of African descent, but it's like black folks catching out of hell right now.
But I don't blame it on Obama. The Republicans had started this thing with, I guess, trying to diminish HBCUs.
Okay.
Long before Obama became president. The thing is, we were asleep. We didn't know what was going on. So if you go back in history and look at when the Republicans had the power, or whether they had the power or not, they eased in people in those states where those colleges that they targeted, that they could go ahead and do things until those colleges, some of them just, they squeezed them out. That is not Obama's fault. It started a long time ago. They take their time while we sleep. And so and it's still going on. All you have to do is freeze the money. And then the other thing that they've done, they will bring in some of our brothers and push them to become president of these colleges. And that's another way just to take them out. And they've done it in some places.
I'll get back to your newspaper. You got so much we could talk about. You're so full of knowledge and wisdom. I want to talk about, what's your proudest moment at your paper that you have, can you recall?
I guess the proudest moment was recently when my husband was enshrined at Howard University.
Oh, wow.
As part of the newspaper. And
excellent.
I mean, that was an awesome experience for me. And of course, it would be a one-time experience. So,
wow.
But on another note, one of the most devastating experiences I had when Obama first ran for president. I've always been a civil rights activist and so forth. I went down to the election commission and I got the list of our 3 predominantly black districts, and then what I did was I printed, it might have been 24 pages of every African American, or everybody in that district. Some of them were white, but not many. They did not vote. Some of them had registered but did not vote. And when I did that, of course, I got calls from Canada, everywhere. Everybody was proud and so forth. But I lost my major advertiser, which was like $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And I had to go to bed. I was sick, And so, but as God always has a plan, I picked another advertiser up that paid more than that.
Oh, wow, that's blessing.
But you know what? Sometimes I'm very foolish, because when Obama ran the second time, I did the same thing. Because we had gotten that advertiser back.
Right.
Lost them again. And I'm just saying, how stupid can you be? But it was worth it to me. I think it was totally unfair, because if you pick up I should say majority, but I'll just say it like it is, a white newspaper. If you get arrested, your name's in the paper. If you don't pay your taxes, your name, your address, your phone, everything's in the paper. You know, anything they want to put in that white paper about anybody, not just African Americans, it's fine. They don't lose their advertising. So why should I have lost mine?
That's a good point.
Why?
Even on TV news, they put people information out there.
Yes.
and they sell the gas stations, sell the mugshot magazines and newspapers as well.
But I'll tell you one thing. One district, I think it's the district maybe I live in, we used to vote 37%. But election time we did 67. We went up over those white districts.
Oh, wow.
You know, so it did that. I wish I could do it again, but I won't try again.
I heard that. That's a 2 minutes up pretty fast. I want to ask you about, I know you said you investigated Dr. King murder or assassination. And I always ask people their thoughts. I had a chance to talk to Judge Joe Brown. He's over that trial with James Earl Ray and stuff, and he told me his thoughts about it. Dick Gregory told me his thoughts about it. Even interviewed some of the black officers that would normally be on his police detail. Officer Ed Reddick, who's deceased, and a couple other people. I talked to them about it on the record. I want to get your point of view about what you think happened that day, or what, you know, anything.
Well, I think people always say they blame white people for King's death. So, but we have to take part of the blame because I think blacks are involved also. I really believe blacks had infiltrated. I also believe that my friend, my photographer, you know, Mr. Withers, used to see him all the time. And then for me to get the FBI records where he said derogatory things about me and had pictures of me and so forth, it was just, I really couldn't even look at it. But someone from the Commercial Appeal came here. I saw it from my own eyes, you know, and just even thinking about Mr. Withers doing this, somebody I thought was really a friend, I sort of understood, because I think I remember him telling me he had a brother or something in Mississippi that was arrested or something, and you know, sometimes white law enforcement will hold something over your head. Right. But you know, I used to talk to my boss, old Jacques Wilmore, who's deceased now. He was director of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, because that's who I was working for then. We used to wonder, because we went from Memphis to Marks, Mississippi, and the whole thing up to Washington, how everywhere we went in all those cities, Mr. Withers was always there taking pictures. Now, I had enough sense to know that black folks don't pay you for pictures. If they do, it's $5, $10. So he had a nice house, had all, you know, all those children. I can't remember how many, but it was a bunch. And we just wondered, how could he do this? You know, who's paying him? But then, you know, you just forget about it. And so I still believe he was on the payroll of the FBI. And I believe there were some other blacks involved, maybe just disseminating information to the FBI. But if they were doing that, they're guilty of killing King, to me, if you were involved in that manner. So
I know people that defend Withers, they make the point that he was like one of the first black police officers. So he still had that police officer mentality of try to protect the public or do no harm, do like in the public interest, like safety measures. But you say he's just as guilty as the folks who actually masterminded the King assassination.
Oh yeah, because I mean, whatever he did, you know, I feel like if he was my friend, why would he assassinate my character? You know, because that's in the FBI records. And what happened was my boss then in Washington, the FBI went to him to have me fired. They said I was part of, I think it was the invaders or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did go to meetings like that, but I was a field investigator for the, you know, so that was my job, to deal with the black community, just like the FBI was dealing with the white community.
But you wasn't doing it as an undercover officer, right?
I was doing it as a federal official.
So they already knew you was a federal official.
Yes.
Coming to these meetings.
They were their office was in the federal building above my office. I knew them, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you this. I know Dr. Kobe Smith. I interviewed him a couple of times. And also, I had a chance recently. I looked up in the white pages online, the ones on the internet. I found the phone number and address for Morrell McCullough. And Morrell McCullough, people don't know, he was the guy that was bending over King when he was on the balcony, laying, dying. And also, he was the guy that told him to point a certain way. And come to find out later on that he was the first black CIA commissioned officer. So I called Mr. Morrell McCullough up. It was fun. I was like, I called him, right? I didn't know, is this the Morrell McCullough? Because ain't too many people spell their name like that, Morrell. And I called him, and a woman answered the phone, and I asked for Mr. McCullough. He said, oh, wait a minute. And then he got on the phone. I said, so are you Mr. Morrell McCullough? He said, yes. I said, were you in Memphis the day King got killed? He said, yes. And I said, were you a member of the CIA? He said, I don't do interviews. I recorded it too. I put it out there on YouTube. This is a trippy thing. But my thing is this. You talking about we blame black people for the death of King. When Malcolm got killed 50 years ago this year, it was a black church that had a dance later on that night. I mean, I don't know what we're thinking about. And that's the contamination of the crime scene. And not only the death of Dr. King, but also Malcolm and even JFK. They contaminated the crime scene. So, did you have a feeling when you was investigating the King assassination that this was an inside job from day one? You think it was an inside job?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. You know, I think it was planned. I think it was planned by the government. And then I just think once, if the government planned it, they had to get some black folks involved. And sometimes we get involved if the money's right.
Right.
And I just think we're all guilty to a certain extent for his death.
Yeah, because even if you think about, I'm thinking about Morrell McCullough. He was there on the scene. He made sure Dr. King was dead, I guess. I know Judge Brown said the shot came from the firehouse because like the black fireman was removed from that house. And Officer Ed Reddick was stationed at the house, and he was surveillance, and they removed him. So Judge Joe Brown always said that the shot came from the firehouse. It didn't come from the flop house. He had a branch obstructing the view. And also, like I said, Morrell McCullough, you think about, okay, let's go back to Malcolm's assassination. Eugene Roberts was his chief bodyguard. He was an undercover bossy, COINTELPRO. Fred Hampton, Chicago, December 4, 1969. Main bodyguard William O'Neill, FBI informant. Agent provocateur, helped set up, the Chicago police raid and stuff like that.
Right.
So you always have a Judas since the days of Jesus. You always have a Judas.
Yes.
You just can't do these type of things without the help of people that look like us or close to us.
Right.
Even when Marcus Garvey, the first black agent, FBI agent 800, was hired to neutralize Marcus Garvey. So Jack Johnson, they used the FBI was built by neutralizing Jack Johnson and Marcus Garvey. And J. Edgar Hoover was a Library of Congress guy. He was a nerd. He was a organizational geek. He wasn't a lawman, but the way he built his power through information.
Right.
So, like, you being a person that's about information, does it bother you that a lot of people are still not aware of what's going on? I mean, you being a journalist for as long as you've been and being in the information business.
Well, it bothers me, but I just feel like, you can only disseminate the information. But you can't make people accept it. So you just do what you have to do, and that's how I live.
And I want to get back to the invaders. You remember Morrell McCullough?
Yes.
What were your thoughts about Morrell McCullough?
No comment.
No comment. Okay, what about anybody? I found out, I talked to Brother Mukasa Dada, Willie Ricks, and he told me that they believe that Charles Cabbage was an FBI informant. One of the founders of the invaders.
No comment.
No comment.
I had my feelings about the invaders. And
no comment.
No comment.
But they did operate out of a federal government building, right? You're saying the headquarters.
No, not the invaders.
Not the invaders. Okay.
No, I remember going to some little house in the black community.
Okay.
In fact, I remember meeting, and at that meeting, Kobe or somebody, or Cabbage, maybe Sweet Willie.
I know Sweet Willie. Yeah, I know.
But somebody was saying, you know, and there was going to be a march the next day, and somebody said something about and throwing the first brick, you know. But I was there as a federal investigator. I didn't have anything to do with it because everything they did, I wrote back to my boss in Washington. That's what I had to do. And so, I think the next day, I can't think of the U.S. Marshal, the first black U.S. Marshal in Memphis. My house in Lakeview Gardens was surrounded. And I guess I was supposed to be one of the participants because the march, somebody's going to throw a brick or something, or riot or whatever. I didn't even know what they were talking about. You know, so somehow that all got to my boss in Washington, but they knew what I did. All I can do is say, thank God I would not be here today in this position. I would probably be working at maybe McDonald's or some white woman's kitchen if my boss in Washington, he sent me, told me what I had to do and all that. If it had been today, I would have been gone. Even though he told me that was part of my job description, they would have lied.
Right,
they would have lied.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you recall where you was at? Do you remember when Dr. King, when you heard the news about Dr. King?
I was in the federal building on my way to Reverend Billy Cow's house for dinner. Everybody was going over there. And so when I left the building, it was just eerie. I didn't see any cars. Nothing was moving. I didn't know what was. I wasn't even thinking about civil rights or anything. So I just, and all the lights were red. So I stayed at one red light, and then I didn't see anybody, and I went on back to the hotel because my room was next door to King's room. And so I finally just went on down to the hotel because that's where all our people were going to meet and go over to Billy's house. And so when I pulled up, there were all the police and everything. Well, the street, they didn't want me to come up. And I said, I have a meeting here and I work for the government. So they let me through and I got to the hotel. And I mean, it just blew me away.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it, you know. I saw the blood. It was just awful.
Well, it had to be so real. Wow.
And then maybe it was the next day, but because I was in that hotel room and somebody called me because I'm a licensed mortician. I know it's weird, but I am. I used to work at Southern Funeral Home, and Mrs. Bailey died. And she was sitting on the throne, so the men didn't want her.
Right.
So they called me, and I went down to get her off the throne.
She was the co-owner of Rainbow Hotel, Walterville. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So, that was just a lot to go through.
Oh wow.
It was a lot.
So when you think about that, I don't know if you don't have to. My thing is this: I saw the documentary Room 306 with Billy Cow's dead. And a lot of people are suspect of Billy Cow's because I got another reading of what happened the last hour of Dr. King's life. It didn't involve them sitting in the room making preacher jokes. It involved them meeting with the SCLC in a meeting room. That's from Ralph Abernathy. And people, excuse me, they're now thinking that Billy Cow's had something to do with the assassination, that he forced the police to stay back a couple of blocks, and that he was a Memphis police informant. You don't believe that?
I'll never believe that. No.
But what I'm asking this as a journalist, and we talk about Ernest with us in the commercial appeal, I thought they did a horrible job, not in terms of information, but they had a chance to ask Ernest Withers, was he an FBI informant, and what was his role with the FBI, and the guy never did. So he was, my understanding from reading the articles, that he talked to Ernest Withers for several years, and they knew about this already. So you think that was a missed opportunity to ask this man?
They had the records, they know.
But to ask him this on the record for him to defend himself, be able to defend himself before he died, or to tell his truth.
Not necessarily. They've got the records. If the FBI paid you, there's some record somewhere. They got the records. So they know he got paid. He was paid.
There's no if, ands, or buts.
He was paid, trust me. Now I'll tell you that much. He got a check.
Let me ask you this, because
it wasn't much. See, that's the part that gets me. It wasn't much money. I couldn't sell my soul for that little bit of money.
Wow.
But I mean, it was enough to keep the family going, and you know, probably all the travel expenses and all that. He got paid. Okay. Now the family can say what they want to say. He got paid.
Wow.
Now maybe he got paid just to take pictures for them, but
he got paid nonetheless.
He got paid.
Let me ask you this. I'm just curious to get your thoughts about Frank Holloman, Memphis Police and Fire Director, who was also Jacob Hoover's number 3 for like almost 30 years. What was your impression of him, Frank Holloman?
No comment.
No. Henry Lowe, the mayor?
No comment.
No comment. It's okay. I want to thank you so much, sister. Can you share one more thing, like you want to leave with our audience, any words of advice or wisdom?
Well, the only thing I can really say to my people is that we have to really seriously just keep up the fight, because things are not going to get better. They're going to get worse for us unless we struggle together. And those brothers and sisters who are educated, have the big jobs and so forth, you know, I don't want you to forget where you came from. You know, so many times we get to where we are. We had the big house and the big car and the big church and all that, and you forget somebody helped you. You didn't just get there. And today it's worse than ever. I've never seen anything like it. You know, I have, like the young girls, they're 14 years old, they're twins. I always hire high school students for my internship program. I hire college students for my internship program. And I'm going to tell you, it's difficult for me. It may be difficult for me to make payroll, but I do it. If I have to take it out my little retirement check, I do it, because I think I owe that much to my people. I didn't just get here. Somebody helped me along the way. And somebody, whether they're black or white, whoever they are, I am very grateful for.
Thank you, sister. And I got 2 more things. Like, most impressive person you ever met in your life?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King?
Martin Luther King, yes.
Did James Earl Ray do it, in your opinion? Or wasn't it about? He didn't do it at all?
I don't believe it.
Okay. And also, like, the radio program, man, what do you think about it? Like, adding to your multimedia empire, like, did you ever see yourself getting involved in radio?
No. Everything I do, something just happens, you know. I don't plan it, you know. In fact, I remember when I started my magazine, and I had the big opening and so forth, and my minister got up and he was talking and he was saying, you know, either I knew what was happening down the road, or I was just, he said, a damn fool. He said, because the economy's not looking good for the news. And so, you know, and I thought about it and he was right. I didn't know what I was doing. I have feel for what I want to do and I just do it. I never even had a business plan for this business. Never. I don't even know how to do a business plan. I just decide I'm going to do it, and I guess God's in the plan for me.
And your business been around for 25 years?
23.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, thank you, Sister Rosetta Miller-Perry. In the words of the late, great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing and doing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.